And we are recording in recording mode for posterity or for our own amusement, either one. And it is a bright sunny day here in the Midwest. How are you this morning, Barrett?
Well, it's good. As long as we're not recording this for our posterior, then I think we're going to be okay.
Yes, well, I think that is one of the potential dangers of indulging in YouTube and Google, is that some people do take it to that lower extreme in the material world.
How are you doing today, Chris?
Really good. I feel like, this new moon that we had over the weekend seemed to have a very, I don't know, intense kind of energy, and if you weren't prepared for it, it seems like it was a little bit shaky. So a lot of my people that I'm in communication with were feeling a little bit of a bump in the road, and for some reason, I think it partly is just tied into the fact that whenever we have a new moon or a full moon in February, we're just done with winter. It's just, it's just been enough. And the moon affects the tides, and the tides of our emotions sometimes get wrapped up in that big drama that goes on in the heavens. So for all the people out there who have felt kind of a blip over the last week, things now should be settling down, and ultimately we should be racing towards spring now, which is a glorious thing.
There you go. Well, speaking of these tides, maybe we can get out a surfboard and we can then surf above the waves rather than kind of being washed ashore willy-nilly.
That is definitely the whole proposition that the Course offers us, is to become invulnerable. I love that whole vision of my invulnerability and your invulnerability. And so we have to arrive at that point where we truly do become fearless, because we have that absolute trust that the Holy Spirit is not going to lead us into a situation where we compromise ourselves, and constantly affirming that we are spirit, and nothing can attack spirit in this realm of mortal bodies. So we have to give up our mortality and step into a higher vision of life.
Yeah, and I like that Jesus is always talking about this idea that we're actually giving up nothing in exchange for everything. I think a lot of times when we hear something like giving up our mortality, it feels like, oh my gosh, what am I giving up? But Jesus is helping us to see that we're not actually giving up anything that has true meaning. We're actually giving up all the false ideas that we had, and in so doing, we actually return back to that peace. So today we are continuing to review section 21 in the manual, which is what is the role of words in healing. And he's talking about kind of the power of the mind, and our ability to really choose what it is we're allying with, which determines our experience. So I was looking at this a little bit before, and there's one sentence that was kind of in the middle that really speaks to this. The prayer for things of this world will bring experiences of this world. If the prayer of the heart asks for this, this will be given, because this will be received. It is impossible that the prayer of the heart remain unanswered in the perception of the one who asks. If he asks for the impossible, if he wants what does not exist or seeks for illusions in his heart, all this becomes his own. So when we're asking for an experience here in this world, when we're thinking that something in the physical is going to be the source of our happiness, then that becomes what we are experiencing. And as we all know, there may be times where we get that thing that we think is going to make us happy, and maybe we are briefly happy, but at some point the happiness fades, or we our attachment of what will make us happy moves on to another object. Um, I remember hearing someone talk about how they had used the law of attraction to manifest this house that they wanted. Well, that was nice for a while, but then they had issues with the house. Then they had things that they wanted to be different with the house, or they wanted a new house. The ego's goal is always moving. It's never stable. And what we're getting is that ultimately we want stability, and we want to start to shift what it is that we're asking for, so that we can move towards having that as our experience.
Absolutely. Another thing that I find interesting is that, that idea of words being a significant step away from reality, because words are but symbols of symbols, creates a gap for us as far as our actually experiencing the things that we think that we want. Because we have an idea about something, and then when it actually materializes in our lives, the idea is not always, or is very rarely, up to speed with what our expectations are. So you get the initial letdown the minute this object that you've been desiring for so long actually manifests in front of you. And then, as with everything else, as you said, the ego's ongoing need to satiate this gluttonous appetite for something more, something different, something this, something that, it just turns into a very unpleasant kind of illusionary life that we live, like a dog chasing its tail. And, every time we bite our tail, it hurts. It's one of the things that puppy dogs have a tendency to somehow come to the realization of, is when they finally do get that thing that is tormenting them, that they think they have to have, and they bite down real good on it. It's somewhat painful. So life is filled with all of these different illusions of what it is that we think that we need, or what it is that we think that we want. And it's fascinating to sit and observe others and reflect on what's going on in their lives, and then see the parallel journeys that we all are inclined to make, because something is always appearing on the horizon that seems so appealing that we've just got to have it. And it ends up being a letdown after we get there.
Yeah, and I like your point about how it is easier to see this outside of ourselves as we start to get this idea of projection, and how that we're really taking the feelings that are inside of us and putting them outside on the world around us. It's a common experience that we look around and we see, oh yes, that person I know is projecting their feelings onto me or on anyone else. And we can see these dynamics. We can see, oh, that person is going for a goal that's not really going to make them happy. But it's really much more profound when we bring that experience in, when we see how we are doing that, when we see how we are projecting, when we see how we are clinging to goals that are not really solid. So these things do all kind of come together, and as we have these sort of deeper realizations, then our experience can start to change, and that's really good news. It means that this work that we've been doing is sort of starting to build up, and it's starting to shift our experience. So we can notice these things as we're journeying on, and it kind of gives us a little bit of fortitude as we're continuing to say, a few years ago when this would have happened, I really would have gone overboard. And now I just went a little overboard. So that's a pretty big step forward. And, it's these kinds of things that help us to know we're moving in the right direction.
Exactly. It is definitely an amazing journey that we're all on, no matter, if you're deeply immersed in the course, or if you've just read a couple of passages from it, because it does start that process where we begin to recognize what is actually going on. We begin to penetrate that dream state and start to aspire for something that is meatier, something that is, of more substance in our lives. And this particular section we're looking at, the last paragraph, I think, is really quite interesting, because I've seen this really working, in a lot of different instances in my own life. It says a major hindrance in this aspect of his learning is the teacher of God's fear about the validity of what he hears. And what he hears may indeed be quite startling. It may also seem to be quite irrelevant to the presented problem as he perceives it, and may, in fact, confront the teacher with a situation that appears to be very embarrassing to him. Well, and apart from the embarrassing part, one of the things that happens as we start to really delve into the course is that we get answers from the Holy Spirit, and they don't always correlate to what we think the problem is. And that loops back into that realization that there is only one answer for every problem that you have imagined that has shown up in your life. So if you can get past that illusion of, listening to the Holy Spirit and its answers coming back to you in non sequiturs, you'll suddenly realize that there is only one answer for everything that we are confronted with in this material region. So as soon as you're willing to accept that premise, all of a sudden you will notice that your journey is beginning to really speed up, that you are advancing rapidly. Because then we're no longer looking for $28 to cover our bank account so the check doesn't bounce. And we're no longer looking for, this type of health insurance or that type of resolution to all these imagined problems. All of a sudden it comes down to one core issue, and that issue is our state of disconnect from God. And that's what we have to look at and realize that that is the heart and the soul of all of these illusions. And when we accept the fact that we were never disconnected, there is a huge shift in just the comfort of living on this mortal realm.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think it's not necessarily that the little indignities or challenges that we face here in the world will end, but our experience of them will be different. We won't be so bothered by what used to really get under our skin, and we can start to have a sense of kind of peace and wonder and joy that sort of just soaks into everything that we're doing. So I like the kind of continuation of this paragraph too. Right after he said that, it may seem like you're hearing something that would be embarrassing. He says, all these are judgments that have no value. They are his own, coming from a shabby self-perception which he would leave behind. Judge not the words that come to you, but offer them in confidence. So it's like there's a presence within us that already knows the whole journey. It already knows that it's going to end up perfect, and we don't need to kind of be so upset or anxious around what's unfolding in our lives. And when we really start to hear that, the fear starts to melt away, and it leads to an experience of kind of a deeper happiness and a sense of stronger stability. Um, I like this idea that ultimately when we make our foundation to be spirit, that is a very solid foundation for us to stand on. And when we're standing here in the physical, it seems to be kind of solid. Most of the time we're standing, it feels firm. But then something happens here in the world, like a literal earthquake or a building collapse, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel solid anymore. And what we're learning is that the seeming solidity of this world is not really what we want. We want the true solidity. And I think that's what Jesus is saying when he said, like, to build your house upon the rock rather than on the shifting sands of time. We want to find that rock and know that we've always been there. We've always been safe. And then the anxieties just start to kind of melt away.
They do. And in that final part of that thought, one of the things that I can refer to or that pops into my mind is that as I'm doing readings with people, a lot of times a whole sentence will come into my mind, and I'll look at it and it's like, what? You want me to say that? That's stupid. And I've learned over the years to just roll with it, and every time I roll with it, the person that I'm communicating with is either surprised because it somehow is very, very intimate to what's going on in their lives, or else is hugely validated. But every time I have, stepped out on that limb, it's worked out much better than if I was just trying to work on that interchange of looking at the cards and coming up with the mundane meanings of the tarot deck. So I think it's very important that we learn how to trust that inner voice and recognize that, that's the voice that's solid. I mean, the ego's voice will always come through in a kind of a hysterical format or in an egocentric way of, this is the truth and I know it and yada, yada, yada. But those stimulants of thoughts and words and sentences that come from that deeper place, they're very gentle in the way they approach us. And if we speak them, if we share them, it will have a profound effect on our surroundings. So there is power in words in this temporal world, and we have to learn how to accommodate that power flowing through us from higher consciousness.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the real power is in our choice to let spirit speak, to let the message of love be heard. And if it sometimes uses our mouth, that's great. If it sometimes uses our actions, that's great. If it sometimes just uses us being present in this moment to communicate that message of love, then that's great too. And I think that as we continue to go, that process just becomes more and more smooth. As you were really sharing, initially when these strange thoughts would come forward, you were maybe more hesitant or more uncertain. But over time, you come to really be in that sense of connectedness with, and I think it speaks to this fact that the faith that Jesus is talking about in the Course is not a blind faith. It's a faith that is earned. It's a trust that is demonstrated time and time and time again. And it's why we want to hold Jesus's hand the next time that shadow comes up in our life, because we know that it will lead us through and help us to see ultimately that there was nothing to fear.
Exactly. Well, I think that we have investigated this passage from a lot of different angles.
Yep.
And I will mention that in about 10 days here on February 21st, we will be doing another of our workshops down in Alsip. So if you're out there floating around with nothing to do, you might want to put that on your calendar, because that can be very, very exciting, very dynamic for everybody involved.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you there. We always have a good time, and love to go deeper into Course in Miracles and hear your perspectives too. So come join us if you can.
Yes, absolutely. That's the salient point in all of this, is that we are definitely available to dialogue about the Course, and we want you to participate in whatever way you can.
All right. Well, it's been a great talk, Chris. I'm really glad we connected again today, and yeah, looking forward to connecting with you again next Thursday.
Yes, you have a spectacular week, and we'll be chatting with you people soon. Bye.
All right.